have said, United Nations Development Programme is working with the government of Sweden and other stakeholders to prepare for this Stockhom+50 meeting. And here in Uganda, we are leveraging on existing country programming and partnerships, and also the work with the government of Uganda in supporting the process of nationally determined contributions. Uganda has already demonstrated increased climate ambition through the enactment of the Climate Change Act of 2021 and finalization of the NDCs, the National Determined Contributions. And we are pleased that UNDP has worked with the Ministry of Water and Environment on the revision of the National Determined Contributions, which now reflect an increased mitigation ambition. UNDP is also working closely with the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and all members of the UN country team in convening different development stakeholders and providing relevant knowledge to identify development challenges, opportunities, and solutions towards environment, climate action, and sustainable development. Therefore, this Stockhom+50 conference opens the way for accelerating actions to achieve the 2030 agenda and beyond. It will complement important spaces that have been created for discussing issues of climate, nature, and pollution challenges that are posed to development and health. This represents an opportunity to think and act beyond the silos towards a more systemic approach. And it offers an opportunity to mark a milestone on how we can deliver on human well-being, capabilities, and freedoms as we go on to the decade of action and beyond. The overarching focus of the leadership dialogues under Stockhom+50 will be on the implementation of tangible value-added actions and deliverables towards a healthy planet, towards a sustainable and equitable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects, and achieving the 2030 agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our generation that has inherited this earth that is rich with possibilities. And never before has knowledge and technology opened so many possibilities to so many, delivering innovations and progress, which was not previously imagined to previous generations. And that is why it is so important to have young people here, because you are the ones who are harnessing this innovation and this technology to open up the possibilities. And yet with these opportunities comes increased responsibility to care for the earth that sustains life and to ensure that prosperity reaches and is shared by all, so that we can really meaningfully address the challenges of poverty and inequality. It is wonderful that these consultations here in Uganda have begun with the young people. And we will continue to engage young people, as has been done, and including in the lead up to last year's climate change conference at COP22. And we're also glad that Ugandan young people were represented and were part of the delegation to COP26. We are committed to continue to work with young people because you are the main change agents and you are stewards in climate action and in ensuring the achievement of sustainable development. You are the driving force in pursuing sustainable development and a climate resilient future. So today we will want to hear your voices to speak about the need for urgent action to save the environment, to tackle climate change, and to raise awareness in your communities, and to build strong networks and partnerships towards sustainable development. As I conclude, I would like to thank sincerely the government of Uganda, led by the Ministry of Water and Environment, for leading these consultations. We want to sincerely thank the Swedish government through Her Excellency Ambassador Maria Hackinson for this great support towards Stockhom+50 consultations. And beyond this, also the overall support of Sweden towards the sustainable development agenda here in Uganda. We also want to thank the participation of the Kenyan High Commission. And to all of you, we sincerely appreciate your presence here. So on behalf of UNDP, we pledge continued support in building a shared vision to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all, while accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals and inclusive green recovery. And with those remarks, I thank you.
Let's give her another round of applause, Sheila. That was remarkable. I want to thank those who are online and following this conversation. Ajema Boafo from Namibia, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Tion Di Bosco, I see you on Twitter. Thank you so much for following. And a couple of others, Access Uganda, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Now, that said, the commitments that are coming from the UNDP, the conversation, how it's all being tailored, it shows that it's a big conversation that is going to be at the forefront of our responsibility as we're tapping into the opportunities there that are. Before I invite the PS, you see you are our guest of honor. I'm going to request in a very humble way that we equally have Her Excellency Maria Hackinson to come and in one way or the other give us a word when she's here standing with us, and she re-echoes a couple of commitments in tandem with what UNDP has actually alluded to. Let's give her a round of applause, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you also to our PS here who sort of noted my confusion when the moderator did his job too good and started asking me the questions meant for you. But I tried to go into that. But so I had prepared some more words to say, but on the other hand, I think our Kenyan representative and also UNDP has a very elaborated addressed the main issues and the purposes and the vision of the Stockhom+50. So maybe I will just at this point not repeat that, also to save more time for what is actually not the main event here, which is as happy as we all are to be here as guest of honors, is actually your discussion today. So I will want not to take too much time. What I will actually do instead is, of course, to thank, because this was sort of the courtesies that I never got to say, to thank the UNDP, obviously also the Ministry for Water and Environment, for the immense work that you are doing with the Stockhom+50 consultations here in Uganda. And I know, and I'm very happy to see that your efforts has led the way for the Ugandan consultations to be inclusive, thought through, and action-oriented. And we look very much forward to taking part of the result. And I, of course, also encourage the Ugandan government and the entire Ugandan delegation to engage in the discussion at the Stockhom+50 meeting, to give voices to the perspectives, experiences, and the standpoints of the Ugandan people, to have them heard, represented, and being part of all these interactive discussions in Stockholm. I think the point made before about the Sustainable Development Goals, and actually I think the Commissioner made a link to the post-COVID-19. I think for the last 2 years, very many urgent issues have sort of been in the backwater of this global pandemic we have all been living in. But I think what we, and from a Swedish point of view, really want and hope is, as we sort of go out and try to rebuild after the pandemic, that we do it building back better and greener. And that's why we often talk about building back better and greener, to use this opportunity to look at recovery, to actually see the advantages of a green transition, and that this could actually be something positive coming out from something very difficult for all of us. So I will then actually conclude here by recalling the words of the late Prime Minister of Sweden, Mr. Olof Palme, at the 1972 conference in Stockholm. He said, "Our future is common. We must share it together. We must shape it together." It was true in 1972, and it is true today. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The conversation is deep indeed. And before we have our peers, it's a conversation looking at the consultations, especially with the youth. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome Mr. Edwin Muhumuza from the Youth Go Green to explain what the Stockhom+50 consultations mean for the youth. The youth, let's give him a round of applause. For the last 12 years, I've known him very passionate about green.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I called you my comrade. I think my first engagement on TV, and talking about nature, environment, and climate change. He's the first person who said to me when he was working with Records Television. I'm happy that we've walked a long journey, and I'm happy that with the statements that we shared at that time, we have now pulled you to moderate a session on environment and climate change. I'm happy. And I'm sure you will continue to have sessions moderated by you because of the zeal, determination, passion that you have developed. And I'm sure the questions you shared with me that time that you asked me have also changed your behavior in terms of making sure that you have responsibility to play in terms of making sure that you protect and safeguard the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, like he said, my name is Edwin Muhumuza. I'm the team leader, Youth Go Green, an organization of young people that are making interventions on climate change. We have been in existence for the last, I think, close to 7 years now. And I'm happy that this room is actually almost filled up with young people, very well prepared to ensure that they take climate action. But also, I speak on behalf of the Forum for Youth on Climate Change and Environment. I'm happy that our permanent secretary is here, who has given the young people a platform to share, discuss, share actions, but also plan together to ensure that at least we have a big role to play in ensuring that Uganda is safeguarded and is well prepared to take actions on climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, I want also to appreciate the government of Sweden, the government, the UNDP, the stakeholders in the room. I really, really, really appreciate you. The government of Kenya coming on board as a body, East African, I think the East African community has a very big role to play in conserving our environment. He has just asked me, what does this feel? What does the Stockhom+50 mean to the young people? I was happy that I participated in the COP26 recently in Scotland. And I think during those side events, we had an engagement with the Minister of Sweden, and he was a Minister of Environment from the Swedish government. And we were looking at how can young people play a critical role in this engagement. And I'm very happy that Uganda right now is having a discussion about the Stockhom+50. And most importantly, having to hear from the young people. They keep mentioning that the youth have a role to play in this engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, as young people, as the young generation, current and next generation, if we don't have the responsibility to make sure that we safeguard the environment, how will our future be? These are our elders, they are our leaders right now. But imagine for the next 50 years, if we don't wake up and take action as young people, how will the country and the world look like? They should not drag us. We should be able to drag ourselves, because we must ensure that we know where we are going and the planet we are living in. We can't see certain things being done and we keep quiet. We can't see forests, our natural resources being degraded. Our precious gifts, natural resources, rivers, lakes, forests, and all other being taken away, being degraded, and we keep quiet. We must speak, and we have to have a role to play in this kind of engagement because this is the future we are fighting for. For the next 50 years, some of our parents will be no more because that's it. God created it that way. But we who are living and who have a chance, and young people, I want to encourage you, protect yourselves. Live healthy and protect the world. This engagement means a lot because it gives us the responsibility to be mindful of the next generation. One, we have a big role to play in conserving our biodiversity as young people. Number two, we have a big role to play in making sure that the policies, strategies, frameworks that they develop under governments or UN system are implemented by us. They are developing policies of which they may not even implement by themselves. They are developing policies that we will be able to implement them by ourselves as young people. I am very happy on behalf of the youth of Uganda that they have been able to say, okay, can we bring you on the table? Can we have this consultation with you? Can we give them a round of applause? This is very, very important. We cannot take this for granted because now they know that young people have a role to play, that young people are the future leaders. We are now developing the next leaders of environment and climate change. We are now preparing, mentoring, training the next conservationists and environmentalists who will be developing the next 100 or 200 years policies and frameworks that will also be able to be implemented by our children and grandchildren. This is a generational cause. And I'm glad that the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Water, has continuously accepted to give us a platform of this nature, that the youth have a stake in these engagements. So this process reminds us as young people that we must ensure that whatever actions, I was reading the concept notes, and the concept note has reminded me something that I didn't know, that the first UN meeting, which took place in 1972, actually gave birth to the United Nations Environment Program. This is something that we cannot take for granted. We need to give them a round of applause, and we appreciate the government of Sweden for this engagement. We pledge as young people that for these consultations that we have started, I know, yes, Uganda has over 78% of its population under the age of 30, but this is just a tip of the iceberg here. These is just a few numbers of the young people. We pledge that after this engagement, we will continue the discussions. We will continue to have the consultations within ourselves. And we pledge that this is not going to happen only in Kampala. Climate actions are on the ground in different parts of the country. As we speak, there are young people who are in forests, wetlands, degrading the environment, but sometimes they don't have options for their livelihood, but they are looking for survival. But how can we, the leaders of these young people, ensure that we train them, we sensitize them on the best practices, on some of those green jobs that we can be able to offer to them? We therefore again pledge that we will continue to sensitize our colleagues, our peers, at whatever level, to continue the discussion. And again, young people, at the end of this engagement, we will be able to give you our ideas, recommendations, aspects of climate action. How do we live in a healthy environment? It's a human rights aspect, and we must engage this in this engagement. We must participate in this engagement, and we will therefore contribute some of the policy recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm to speak about climate change, if I'm to speak about young people, involvement, the environment in these aspects, I will not end. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you, youth, please be active. We are going to have breakout sessions, but can you contribute? Can you reflect back what happens in your villages? What happens? And these are the actions that we need here. And for those who will be happy to participate in the engagement in Sweden, for those, I'm saying for those who will be lucky to have our views presented in the international, the conference, please, this is something that we want you to take. This is the message that we want you to amplify. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for this opportunity. And we want to say, as young people, we are committed, determined to have this climate agenda move forward. Thank you. Over to you.
Edwin speaks to it that indeed the youth are very determined to have this agenda cascaded down to the lowest person. Someone has sent a tweet, and I'd love to read this. Thank you so much, Ziani. Ziani says, the healthier our ecosystems are, the healthier the planet and its people. Ahead of Stockhom+50 plus, a perfect occasion to raise awareness about the importance of protecting our universe, and let us equally as well take these conversations to our peers beyond the borders. Thank you so much, Ziadi. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to welcome our chief guest today. And this happens to be the PS from the Ministry of Water and Environment, Mr. Alfred Okot Okidi. Round of applause for our chief guest as the council addresses.
Thank you, Andrew. First and foremost, I bring apologies from the Minister for Water and Environment. He was meant to be here, but unfortunately could not make it because he has a meeting with the principal. Hence, mine stepping in. Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden to Uganda, Maria, Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of Kenya to Uganda, represented by Yusuf, the UNDP Deputy Resident Representative, Your Excellency Sheila Gatia, members of Parliament, directors, and commissioners present, the youth, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for joining us at this event to launch the consultations of Stockhom+50. The theme is a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility, our opportunity. Mark those two words, responsibility and opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, a prosperous future on a healthy planet calls for an inclusive approach that reflects the richness and the diversity of the voices and the perspective of the various stakeholders. And these include the local government, cities, civil society, organizations, women, the indigenous people, the local communities, faith-based groups, academia, the youth, industries, financiers, foundations, etc. With that hindsight, we see the objective of this consultation as follows: to build a shared global vision on how to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all, while accelerating progress on the SDGs, the MEAs, and inclusive green recovery. We also see this as an opportunity to offer clear recommendations to government, civil society organizations, the private sector on priority actions that can advance national and sectoral policies that address climate change and leverage nature-based solutions. We see this as a cardinal tool to involve, especially the next generation, the youth. And as a ministry, it is our goal and target to ensure that the young people are involved with us at all levels. We also want to use this as an opportunity to build and inform the NDCs, the national biodiversity strategies and action plans, as well as the green economy, stroke recovery, and the SDGs. It is an opportunity for us to amplify the voices of the poor, the youth, the women, the indigenous groups, local communities, and other marginalized groups, yet was affected by climate change. It is also an opportunity for us to influence the national and global debates, as all views will be considered. So I urge you to make sure that you play your cardinal role to attain these objectives. What do we expect from the conference? What are the outcomes as we reflect on the theme? Ladies and gentlemen, you are all aware that countries are striving to recover and reset from the pandemic and global lockdown. Stockhom+50, with the consultations to be held at national and local government levels, will provide the needed opportunity to undertake the following: rebuild relationships of trust for strengthened cooperation and solidarity, including by reimagining our future together through engagement, knowledge sharing, and learning. It will also accelerate the system-wide actions needed to recover and build forward from the pandemic, including through innovative finance for an equitable recovery mechanism to address debt through collective action, and creating physical spaces to support just transition pathways to a low carbon, circular, nature positive, and resilient development. It will also help us to connect and build bridges across agendas, drawing together the commitments from the global processes of 2021 and 2022 to strengthen the environment dimension of the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goal. Ladies and gentlemen, Uganda is a member of several multilateral environment agreements since the 1972 Stockholm Convention. And these include the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, the Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Wastes and their Disposal, African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, Minamata Convention on Mercury, and the Montreal Protocol on Substances that deplete the ozone layer. As the ministry concerned, we are at the heart of the implementation of these environmental agreements. And I'm happy to note that a series of initiatives, programs, projects have been implemented in collaboration with several partners. And I thank all the partners for this meaningful collaboration. The ministry, together with partners, has put in place and is strengthening the National Forum on climate change and environment, which will be solely handled and managed by the youth. My appeal to you is that it should be a national forum. National, not Kampala or Kiso and Machinde. National. So my people in Padue, my in-laws in Busia, and my friends from Mitoma and Bundibujo should all be there. Let it be national. And we also want to really say thank you to the development partners who are assisting us in this. And as a Minister of Water and Environment, I think we have made the commitments and we are working it, that in all fora, all committees where issues of environment and climate change is involved, it is a must that on the steering committee or the board, the youth has a representation. The ministry is organizing the National Tree Planting Day that we expect to happen in May, towards the last week of May. Again, I call upon you, the young people, to make sure that you amplify that message and actively participate in that national event. The government of Uganda has come up with the Decade of Restoration, and this has been considered by Cabinet, and the youth has a huge role to play in that. And at an appropriate time, we'll be calling you to share with you, because we've made consultations, the contents of what has been approved for implementation. Uganda has implemented a number of the agreements, like the UNFCCC on climate change, the Paris Agreement, with different responsibilities. I'm happy to note that we are one of the first countries to develop the nationally determined contribution in 2015 and the NDC partnership plan. The NDC provides the overall guiding framework for the country to implement climate change, mitigation, and adaptation actions. This is a live document that I urge you, the young people, to take interest in, because as Edwin noted, some of the issues to be implemented will be done long when some of us are already feeding the environment in another format when we transition. On the Stockhom Convention, I'm happy to note that the government has and continues to use this as a practical guide, and we have enacted guidelines that encourage actions by all stakeholders as enlisted in the National Environment Act. So we have domesticated it in our law. The Stockhom+50 plus consultations therefore provide us with a time to reflect on the progress made so far in the implementation of these environmental agreements, the challenges faced, and the opportunities that can be realized to achieve these agreements. The implementation of these programs and agreements require concerted efforts from government, the private sector, civil society, organizations, the youth, development partners, that is to say all. This is the only way we can talk about accelerated actions on the MEAs. I therefore pledge the support of my ministries, the support to ensure that these consultations are conducted to bring together all these stakeholders. I believe that the next week, we have a series of consultations with these stakeholder groups, and I'm delighted that we have started on a very good note with the most important constituency, that is the youth. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank the Swedish government through Her Excellency, Madam Ambassador Maria, for the financial support towards this process, to the government of Uganda in a bid to achieve sustainable development. I would like to thank the UNDP for the technical support and the methodical support working with Climate Change Department through these and several processes. I would like to thank the government of Kenya for co-hosting and also for looking after UNEP very well in Nairobi. I'm very confident, ladies and gentlemen, that the outcome of these consultations should offer an opportunity for Uganda to rethink and reflect on the path to achieve 2030 agenda and beyond, and recommit to mark a milestone on how we can conceive and deliver on human well-being, capabilities, freedoms, by focusing on the needs of humankind in the next decade and beyond. I thank you all for the attention, and on behalf of my minister, I would like to declare the Stockhom+50 consultations officially launched for God and my country.
Let's give the PS some more round of applause. PS has, in one way or the other, tapped into the time travel model. 50 years from now, when he will be helping the environment in one way or the other. And I want to assure you that you will live indeed to the responsibility of what you have lived for. That said, allow me to welcome the Assistant Commissioner from the Ministry of Water and Environment, that is Climate Change Department, that is Bob Natif, to give us the presentation about the Stockhom+50 consultations before we finalize. But those who are following us online, we really want to thank you so much. Oh, let's request our panelists to come back on the seats. Let's give them a round of applause as they come. Thank you. Thank you so much. Those following us online, that is on NTV, as well as those on Zoom, and those on Spark Blue. If you want to tap into the Spark Blue, just go on to UNDP Twitter handle, and the link is actually there. You can join to be a part of this conversation. The hashtag still runs, only one Earth, and Stockhom+50, and the other hashtag is Global Goals.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. MC. You popularly known as Motua Wansi. Yes. Please project my presentation, please. Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister represented by the PS, Mr. Alfredo Kotokidi, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya to Uganda, represented here.
Just a minute, given that it's a green event, those of you who want to drink water, I understand you can't see any bottle on your table. We have the dispenser at the back end, and we can only have water in glasses. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And that's leading to the mantra of Stockhom+50. The resident representative, UNDP, represented by Madam Sheila Ngatia, Madam Commissioner of Climate Change. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very simple job to do, just to again emphasize some of the things that the honorable members have just said. And I'll run through very quickly by a simple introduction. Everybody has talked about Stockhom+50. Maybe what I bring forward is what are the nuances within this Stockhom+50 or the 1972 agreement that you heard about. It talks about three key fundamentals that we need to take back at the back of our minds. One, the aspirations or dictates around climate. The second is about pollution. And the third is nature. So what we are trying to bring in this discussion is the nexus bound around these three and how it contributes to the global good of the environment. Conference organization and outcome is merely process-oriented, but everybody, the previous speakers have talked about it. Emphasis on country-level consultations, but I think the message to take home here is what Mr. Pierce has said, to make sure it is regional not just on paper, but in practice. And Mr. PS, we're trying to do our level best, especially with the support of UNDP, because the mantra of not leaving no one behind. And then I'll summarize in a word or two how I see us moving forward. Next, please. Okay, so I'll not deliver so much into the landmark conference. Everybody at least by now knows Stockholm, but maybe for the youth, Stockholm is found in Sweden. There's a time I attended the Durban conference in 2012. So you can see I'm growing old in these things. When President Zuma came to address COP 16 or 17, people were asking him, are you going to address police officers or not? He said, no, this is a conference of parties. The different countries have come to Durban to deliberate around climate change. So when you talk about Stockhom+50, like it's been eloquently put forward, it's the 50 years that we are marking into those three core principles that I've talked about. But I think the uniqueness around this is how do we accelerate action and implementation of what we've put forward to achieve. And that's why we call the 10-year, the decade of acceleration. So I've talked about why and how this convention bounds around three key principles, which should be at the back of our minds. And those principles actually further fostered and guided by what was included in the declaration, the three key core areas: the framework on environmental action, recommendations for actions at international level. But of course, it doesn't stop at international level. We have to cascade this down. And if you heard what PS said, for example, what we reflected in the NEMA Act, it's been cascaded right from the international conferences, the Minamata Convention, and so on and so forth, and how that particularly now applies to the local situation, just about the UNFCCC convention is as well. And of course, the different action plans that we take forward, the NDC that you repeatedly hear, and so many other action plans that we have in place. The last point I want to make about the history coming to this is the most significant outcome of this thing was establishment of the UN environment. And I think we all agree that UN environment has been at the forefront of supporting all of us to champion environment and climate issues, especially with the last meeting that we had in Nairobi, where the Mr. PS represented and the Honorable Minister. Next. I wish I had it's very discomforting to say next. Where is it? Okay. So what are the key objectives of this? As I said, all these have been said, but I'll belabor so much on how we are framing this across three key dialogues, three core tracks. One, dialogue one, which is ultimately looking at the urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all. We agree that achieving prosperity for all cannot be very straightforward if we don't have this inclusive engagement of all stakeholders. So that's particularly key. Not merely to put up infrastructure or whatever, but I think a discussion back and forth to see, for example, how that infrastructure can be used sustainably. And that's key. And since you pride yourselves in living 50 or 100 years from us, so there we go. Whatever that we are putting forward, how do we take advantage of that? Because it's an investment. The second key dialogue is achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from the coronavirus. I think this doesn't require any talk anymore. I think we've been through it. We've been through the lockdowns. We've also had the disadvantages and the advantages that come, for example, with the pandemic that we faced through. For instance, how do we move towards better transport systems to address, for example, the issue of pollution that the Stockhom+50 talks about, but all in general, how these interact within the space of nature. The third track and important leadership dialogue that we're going to focus on is accelerating implementation of the environmental dimensions of sustainable development in the context of a decade of action. I've talked about this, and I think, as I say, repetition is learning. We want to make a difference. For if you're not born 40 years ago, but at least you're born in this decade of acceleration. So you also have a part to play. And this is the nexus that we are trying to create in these dialogues. Next, please. This is a slide which is heavily cluttered, but very quickly it shows who we are going to engage and how we are interacting with the various stakeholders that involved, right from international, regional, and national level, but of course not forgetting the different multilateral partners that work within us here and beyond. For example, at global level, we look at what it is that these various institutions are doing or discussing around Stockhom+50. We talk about the UNDP Global Survey and Strategy, then the various youth events that we are going to engage in. Regional level, it's the same thing, and then the country level specific to the different consultations that we are going to hold. And of course, this is done with the hindsight of having Sweden, which is the host of the 2nd to 3rd June meeting, but remember it was also the host of the 1972 meeting. Next. So how are these consultations structured? It's been some kind of targeted planning, vigorous planning with the Ministry of Water and Environment, the Swedish Embassy, and the UNDP. The kicker was a high-level meeting with the ministers at UNDP. I was privileged at that point to also sneak into there, and as you can see in the picture, Madam Commissioner was unable to represent, but I think I ably represented. So this is where the discussion started at 28 March, and the rest of the slides you're going to see what transpired. So that is ticked. The next one is number 2, where we're looking at this critical constituency of the youth, number 2. So dedicated youth consultations at national level. And then we want to speak to what our boss said, the regional consultations. How then do we ensure we take this across the different regions, as it were? And as I said, we have tried to be fair and balanced in the way we make these and we select these various participants that we are looking at. We'll have a national consultation. So out of all these engagements and every insights and input that you're going to give us, how then we bring it to the national level? And right after that, then we'll have to come up with a draft report actually, which will synthesize every outcome of the consultations to ensure that we come up with a formidable document that we'll use as a basis for the engagements on 2nd and 3rd. I've been in touch with Her Excellency, the Ambassador, but plus the assistant. I think already an invitation has been issued to the Prime Minister, Mr. PSS for information, and Madam Commissioner. And maybe I think it's our job on our part to ensure how we follow up to ensure representation at that level. Next, please. Just in half a minute, this is just a summary of what I talked about, but this time reflecting on the deaths. So I think the keen interest should be on the last column on the right, where we are talking about the deaths. The other second important point, as you can see, it is a tight schedule that we have to walk through, but we're working with an able consultant, Dr. Magunda, who's been with us in this space for a while, having worked for NARO, and he's been in touch with us for quite a while. With the support of UNDP and ourselves, we should be able to meet the timeframes as enlisted. Finally, I'll keep the communications. I think this is just how we're trying to look at how we can increase the outreach and involvement of everybody else. And I had Andrew ably and eloquently talk about these various channels that have been exhibited, where we encourage, again, the youth to show your much needed energy, more than what you've seen here. Lastly, okay, there was a slide on conclusions, but I think the bottom line, and it's even blank, but I'll speak to it. The points that we're trying to make is how do we fit within the theme that has been set, which is really very clear. And that, unlike the PS said, please mark that. It's a healthy planet for prosperity for all, our responsibility and our opportunity. It means that where there's collective responsibility, there should be collective shared benefit, because we are looking at the collective shared benefit of the different actions that we undertake to enjoy in this global environment, or even the local environment that we live in here, so that we can healthily live and survive. If you're to live to the next 50 or 100 years that you talked about, but don't be surprised, maybe PS will even live for another 50 or 100. With that, thanks very much, and back to you, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother Bob Natif. I think the timelines, we saw them, and I want to thank those who have been following this conversation on NTV and on Spark Blue, as well as on Zoom. Our time seems to be getting done with TV, but we want to thank you so much, the online audience. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, but it doesn't stop here. Be part of the conversation from your district level, your village level. Be the person who amplifies this conversation among the youth and the people within your vicinity. Now, coming back here, I want to request my panelists as well as our chief guest to come for a group photo. And again, I would request Natif to come as well and be part of this. We're going to sneak in this as well. And I would request the team from UNDP to bring a couple of gifts. We have some gifts for you. And later, the rest of us will go into the breakup sessions. Please note, water will be served in glasses here because we're trying to be within the conversation. Let me request, we can have a group photo here. Yeah, use the glass to have water. This is a group photo. It goes into archives. The young lady who prayed for us, Ethos. Yeah, Ethos, Sekancha. Yeah, she's coming. She's coming. And Edwin, yes. There she comes. I think she'll be in the middle because these are the next 50 years. Perfect. There she is. Okay, without the mask. 10 seconds. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To our panelists, that is the High Excellency Maria, as well as the Kenyan representative. I would request the team from UNDP, we have some gifts for you. The panelists, Madam Miss Sheila Ngashi will actually give them out. This is a token of appreciation from UNDP, thanking you for the commitment, the contribution, and the support you've given all through. We really want to thank you. Yes, Commissioner Muresa, you shouldn't miss out on this as well. Thank you so much. The rest of us will clap for them as we're appreciating UNDP. Thank you so much. Thanks for the support. And you're equally given calendars that you mark the timelines we have as per this agenda. The images that are depicting the Pearl of Africa, they're all here, the buffaloes, the national parks. The rest of us, we will get these as and when we're done. But for now, let's clap for our panelists for that. I will take on your behalf for now. Thank you so much. Allow me request Bob Natif again to come and guide us. We're going into the breakup sessions, but please be guided. Water will be taken using glasses only, and thereafter we'll be guided on what will be coming forward. Thank you so much. Those who have been tweeting, thank you so much. Let's keep the hashtag going. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Andrew. I think he deserves a round of applause for a job well done. And thanks very much, our excellencies, for gracing the occasion. So you leave us here to continue with the conversation, and I'm sure you'll get to know the outcomes of the meeting. I'll kindly request Dr. Magunda to also come here so we can do the spread of these consultations. And we have some people online. I don't know how, I think they're also going to be a part of the breakout. Just so we're so accurate and not to misrepresent the groupings, we have a PowerPoint presentation. So I'll invite Dr. Magunda to kind of take center stage as I take this presentation for you to run through. Thank you.
Okay. We welcome you to this session where we are going to have the breakup sessions, and then we see how we collect the responses. As they are loading the presentation, which is a very brief presentation, we could take some few question and answer from what has already been deliberated during the high-level launch of this activity. If you have a quick question, there are many experts here who can help to elaborate on the issues that you are raising. So let's take some 5 minutes or so as they load the PowerPoint presentation, and then we see how we proceed. As has already been introduced, my name is Matthias Magunda. I'm the national consultant supporting the country consultations and eventual development of the report that will be presented in Stockholm. So you're most welcome. We look forward to your real active participation and input into this whole process. Yes. Any quick questions? Yes. We can take 2, 3, and we get responses, and then we get another batch of questions, and then we see how we proceed. 1, there was another 1, 2, 3.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Magunda. My name is Tony Mozea, and I work with Foundation for Male Engagement. I want to first of all thank the Ministry of the Water and Environment for the first time. We have had a comprehensive, meaningful youth participation, and I think we should clap for that. I have to say that because during the consultations of the COP26, I participated in getting consultations from the different youth groups, and we contributed to the national determined contribution. And I would say that I have had a chance of attending these gatherings. Some of these things don't reach, but for the first time in the history of Uganda, our contributions reached Glasgow, and Edwin can attest to that. So you can clap for that. Also, when it came to the consultations during the climate change bill, I don't know if most of you here had a chance with Edwin, UNDP, and other, particularly the Climate Change Department, the Ministry of Water and Environment. Really, they have really engaged us, because me, I'm into the section of productive health and rights, but now we are trying to integrate it into climate change. So most of these things, we have the green growth strategy. I don't know if most of the young people are aware of these things. So Mr. Magunda, I think we should look at some of these strategies that the government of Uganda has come up with, the green growth strategy, because we are looking at a healthy planet. I don't know if most of the young people here know about the strategy, because we want to see a city that is green. We have seen what is happening in Rwanda. We want to see the same in Uganda here. And it's our responsibility to do that. So as young people, for me, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make those few comments, and let's be collective. I know most of us, when we go into groups, let's try and concretize the documents. I've so far went through leadership 1, so that we give concrete, because these things will be presented in June. So we want to have something that is really from the young people. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the comment. That's the comment.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Dion Bosco. I am a student from Gulu University. My question goes, as we do these consultations, we get youth ideas. My main concern is feedback. I remember I participated in the consultation for COP26, and after the event that happened, the same feedback has not been taken to the youth that gave their ideas. And we expect after the event, there must be action. So my question is, what are the modalities of feedback that this Stockhom+50 is going to give to the stakeholders and to the youth that can spark action? Thank you.
Okay, we have another comment or question.
Okay, again, Edwin here. Mine is, I look at the period for the consultation vis-a-vis the international conference in Sweden. And to me, it looks like as if we are a little behind. And I'm wondering how, especially now that you're handling the consultations for these engagements, how fast will you move to ensure that, from what I have seen, what my comrade Bob has presented here on the screen about the structure, the engagements at the national level, regional level, getting into the districts and other parts of the country to get the views of the citizens, will you manage to put together all these processes and looking at the time frame that you really have? I'm wondering, I'm just afraid. I don't know whether you will skip a few of these consultations, which will now create some bit of gaps. How prepared, how ready are you to ensure that by the date of the conference in June, we would have delivered all this and effectively? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions and comments. There was this issue of the feedback modalities. The fact that people come in, contribute, and after the conference, there is no feedback. Fortunately, with the Stockhom+50, we have post-conference activities. In other words, after the conference, there will be additional engagements post. So we are hopeful that after the conference, we shall also be able to engage and provide a feedback. Then on the TIDE program that has already been presented on the screen in the last presentation by Bob, yes, we are a little bit behind schedule compared to other countries, because other countries started much earlier than us, but we are more or less catching up. As you might have seen from the schedule, the whole of next week is a week for consultations. On a daily basis, we are engaging the different groups. As you might have seen from the screen, the regional consultations have been combined. For example, we are combining Northern and Eastern into one group, and we engage them, I think it's Monday or Tuesday. The engagement will be both physical and virtual. We shall have a few people who will be joining us physically. These meetings, the base will be in Entebbe, Protea Entebbe, and then the majority of the other people will be participating virtually. So that is the arrangement that we have because of the limited time that we have to make sure that the country level engagements, consultations are completed, and we are able to prepare a country position with recommendations and be able to present them in Stockholm early June. So the whole of next week, we are engaging all these different stakeholders. We start with the regional meetings, then we get into the targeted groups, like the private sector, the producers and other people. So the whole of next week and going a little bit into the other week, we are carrying out these engagements in a marathon manner to make sure that we reach out. This is again dictated by time, as you have seen from the tight schedule. So we are hopeful through this arrangement and through the other means of getting a feedback, like you've been told, we have the Spark Blue portal where we can engage and collect feedback, and all these other Facebook, Twitter. So we are hoping that we shall be able to engage. Please bear with us. We are constrained by time, but we have the international obligation, the deadlines, as you have seen from the schedule, which we must comply to if we have to get a good report and proper representation in Stockholm at the main meeting. So we are time constrained, but I think now we have gained momentum now that we have started with you, the youth. And as I said, we are looking for your active participation and strong recommendations so that next week we are able to engage with the others and eventually complete these consultations, which again, after we have filtered them, we shall be able to have that national consultation where I'm sure some of you will also be participating. And eventually we have a validation meeting where we shall be cleaning up these consultations, making sure that we refine the recommendations so that we don't go to Stockholm with a shopping list. This is very, very important. I will keep emphasizing this throughout today. We don't want a shopping list. We are looking for precise, concise recommendations, especially from you, the youth. Really want brief recommendations, which in some circles we call them changes. Others call them innovations. But we are really looking for these game-changing solutions for the issues that you have already been introduced to, and which I'm going to clarify further in the few slides which are meant for the group work. Any other two quick questions, and then we see how we proceed. I will take one from here and another one from that side. Starting from here.
Thank you very much. I'm called Ivan Mushana, a team leader to Uganda Academy in the Kanungu district. My question goes straight to the Ministry of Water and Environment, especially where I heard that in May, the ministry is planning to launch the tree planting day. So I just wanted to know about the targeted number of tree seedlings planned to be planted on that day, and who are the participants, especially, I don't think I had heard about it. This is my first time. but what are the communication channels that this is being amplified further so that the other stakeholders outside there can know about it and perhaps participate during this day? And how can the interested stakeholders, especially the youth-led initiatives in the green projects, participate meaningfully on this day? Thank you very much.
Okay. Last one from this side, I think it was a lady. Let's be gender sensitive.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Mine is more of, can I say, just a suggestion. I was thinking through and read my mind on during and post Stockhom+50 conference. What were you thinking for the youth after this dialogue? It shouldn't stop here, but you answered that to have post conference engagements. So I'm just wondering, would it be very prudent to have, say, like a movement or a group of youth that are national to continue with these engagements that you're planning? And probably if you could clearly state what they are, so then we can probably have a national movement to continue with this particular group and add others, so we can have like a Ugandan movement or an East African or regional movement that can be a continue with this, because climate change is not anything that is going to stop today or even tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. I think I will start with that before I go to the Kanungu question. These could be some of the ideas that you bring up in the recommendations. You know, as said, we are looking for those game-changing recommendations. Feel free to include some of these ideas in the recommendations when we get into the working group. And as I said, there will be a post-summit forum of engagement so that we see how are we going to move these processes forward. So those are some of the issues that we are looking forward to collecting from the different stakeholders. As I said, I called them game-changing solutions. Others call them innovative ways of doing business. So feel free to include some of those issues. On the question from Kanungu, I will ambush the commissioner who was not inside when it was asked. The issue raised was regarding what the permanent secretary talked about as a tree planting day, which is planned, I think, for next month. They were asking, how are we engaging them, the youth and other stakeholders, and the different actors in the different parts of the country? Madam Commissioner, sorry you were not inside here, but I know you have the capacity to respond to that issue, which was raised by the permanent secretary. Microphone, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Magunda. And also for that question, how is the ministry going to engage the youth in the National Tree Planting Day? You know, Uganda has 4 National Tree Planting Days, and this is going to be one of them. I think this is going to be on Labor Day. So it is important that we involve as many stakeholders as possible. You know, Uganda has the 40 million tree planting campaign. This 40 million tree planting campaign was launched in 2020 at the peak of COVID,
We launched this together with the institutions and schools in particular, because we thought schools are in a better position to manage the trees that are planted, because the students will be there, they are youthful, they are more responsible. So we launched this with schools. So now that this is coming up again, we want to ensure that as many people plant trees as possible. So how are we going to engage the youth? I think the best will be through those, the districts, because what we do, we supply seedlings to the different beneficiaries. So if the youth are organized within your, wherever you come from, if you're from a district, you get in touch with the district forest officer who will be having those seedlings. But however, you could also write, you write officially to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Water and Environment, requesting for seedlings. We have done that for individuals and many have benefited. But also my Permanent Secretary talked of youth forum, formation of a national youth forum. And we've been engaging with some youth. We've had a number of engagements with the youth under the coordination of the Embassy of UK. Please come up from the youth forum. We've guided you, we gave you how you should go about it. We need you to be properly registered so that we have a proper entry point to the youth. It is not only about tree planting, there'll be a number of other engagements we want to have with the youth. So you really need to be organized. And we had given you time frame to do this, and I think we are not meeting those time frames, the youth. Please keep to our time frame so that we can have a meaningful engagement with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner, for that feedback. I think now the ball is in your court. See how you can organize yourselves. Get in touch with the ministry so that you see how you can participate in this activity as has been elaborated by the Permanent Secretary and properly elaborated by Commissioner. So please feel free to get in touch with the ministry so that you actively participate in this activity. And as she has said, this is a normal annual event where specific days during the year specifically put in place so that we have this activity of tree planting. Now with that, I request that we stop there in the interest of time, and we move forward and see how we are going to organize ourselves for the group work. Next slide, please. Okay, it has already been mentioned that this conference has been organized along collaborative and multi-stakeholder discussions along three themes, or what we have called leadership dialogues. The first one being reflecting on the urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all. I'm going to elaborate further on what that will entail. The second one, leadership dialogue 2 or theme 2, is achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. Now, the third dialogue is on accelerating the implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development in the context of the decade of action, which was elaborated on in the morning, and for the delivery of sustainable development. So those are the three main areas, call them themes, call them dialogues, where we are going to separate and make contributions to some set of questions which have been organized for those dialogues. So basically, these dialogues are expected to contribute to the international meeting by yielding clear and concrete recommendations for action at all levels, including through strengthened cooperation. As I mentioned earlier on, we are looking for concrete recommendations from you that we can take forward and eventually, not only at the global level, but bring back for overall implementation at the grassroots. Now, starting with the first theme, reflecting on urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all, each of these themes has about 5-6 questions. They are not very many. And for each of those questions, we are looking for your recommendations. For example, under this leadership 1, the first question is, how can we restore and regenerate a positive relationship with nature? Or you can say halt land degradation. And here what we are looking for is for you to give us 2 or 3 good practices. It could be pathways that you would like to see scaled up to enable a move to a healthier planet. In brackets and in italics, we've given some guidance. You could give examples from clean technologies, adaptation, mitigation, resilience to climate change, or from the NAPA. That is just guidance to give you some direction. But all that we are looking for, we want some 2 to 3 good practices which you think can be scaled up. Look at what is being implemented currently and recommend 2 or 3 good practices which you think can be scaled up. Like somebody who said there should be a youth drive. What did she call it? That can move around the country promoting some activities. Now, the other question under that theme is, what are the actions that you or your group would take to scale up change towards a healthy planet? What are those actions that you think can make that change, what I call game-changing solution? Additionally, what policies or structures need to be put in place for you to take such action? And again, in italics, in bold, we have given some suggestions to give you some guidance. You could look at producing and consuming sustainably and fighting pollution. You could also be looking at the policies that are required in the next 5 to 10 years to reduce the negative material footprint. We are currently putting a negative footprint on the environment. What is it that we can do to reduce that negative footprint? As I said, each one has 5, but for purposes of presentation, I've just picked a few just to guide the discussion. On the second theme, achieving sustainable and inclusive recovery from the corona pandemic. 1, we are asking, what are the most promising, sustainable, and inclusive recovery practices currently being applied by public, private, and civil society groups at individual, community, civil, regional, or country level? And how do we scale them up? Again, we are giving some guidance which you could disregard if you have other options. We are looking at actions for recovery in key COVID-affected sectors and value chains, interventions for SMEs, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, youth, and other examples that you may want. The other question, what recovery and pre-existing practices need to be changed to ensure an inclusive and sustainable recovery? Again, here we are giving guidance. We've been looking at the prioritization of interventions for the SMEs, which have been greatly affected by the pandemic and which are critical to achieving an inclusive and transformative recovery. On the third one, accelerating the implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development in the context of the Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development. One of the questions that we are asking and require your recommendations are, what are the biggest challenges we are facing in implementing the commitments to the 2030 Agenda and all these other multilateral environmental agreements, the mayors, and how do we create an enabling environment for delivery on the ground? The other question where we are looking for your answers and recommendations, what are the good practices and pathways that you would like to see scaled up to accelerate the implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development in the context of the Decade of Action? So basically, as I said, we have very few questions, 5 to 6 for each of those thematic areas, and we are looking for your input into those guiding questions. The other guidance we are giving is that we request that you align your recommendations or answers to current development frameworks. We have a number of development frameworks which are on the ground. You know, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Vision 2040, National Development Plan 3, the Green Growth Strategy, which somebody has already talked about. Let me hope you as a youth are familiar with the Green Growth Strategy. We have other frameworks, the NDC, NAPA, the Biodiversity Strategy, and other action plans. We also have other plans that are designed to achieve the objectives of the other mayors that are linked to the SDGs. So basically what we are saying, try to link your recommendations to the ongoing or those frameworks which are on the ground, because when you recommend an action, it shouldn't fall far from what is already being implemented. So try to be as close to the actual available implementation frameworks which are on the ground. I think that is the last slide. How are we going to organize ourselves? We are going to organize ourselves in two forms. Initially, we had thought that most of you would have laptops so that we would automatically spread you into 3 groups with the support of the IT person. The fact that number of participants are online, what we are going to do, we are going to have the participants that are online split into 3 groups, and they are put into different chat rooms. That is possible via Zoom. And then for us who are here physically, we are going to have 3 groups, and each of the group will address one of those thematic areas which I have highlighted. And we are going to give you those guiding questions that are relevant to your group that you are working in. So basically that is the arrangement. Those online will be split into 3 groups and put into different rooms. And those of us who are here are going to split into 3 groups. We are going to take numbers so that we have the 3 groups. And then afterwards, we give you the questions. When you get into the groups, please elect a chair and a rapporteur. Elect a chair and a rapporteur because we shall need a feedback after the group work. The other important issue that I would like to mention has already been mentioned already. This is a green event. We are minimizing the use of things that will affect the environment. Consequently, we have minimal paper reproduction. So when you go into the groups, kindly find somebody who has a laptop who will be able to give us a feedback or report back with a soft copy rather than our old way of doing business. You can see there are no flip charts, there are nothing. We want to make sure that we minimize the negative environmental impact by making this meeting and all the forthcoming meetings as green as possible. So basically that is the basic arrangement. We are splitting into 3 groups for the physical people who are here. The IT person will help us to split the people online into 3 groups. And eventually, after some time, we shall be reporting back and looking at your recommendations. Again, let me emphasize the need to be concise, the need to make as few recommendations as possible that you think are going to be those key game-changing solutions for the different questions that we have put for the different thematic areas. Now, with that, unless there are 1 or 2 quick questions for clarifications, we shall proceed to take numbers for the 3 groups, and we will see where the different groups will sit within this room, and then those online will continue in different chat rooms as would have been arranged with the support of the IT person. Yes.
Thank you very much. It's just an addition on how to get guided better on how to split into 3 groups. At the time when I was filling the online form to participate in this event, there was an option to select which leadership dialogue one would wish to participate in.
Okay.
So I think that from that perspective, it can enhance the guide, especially to have everyone stick to the choice we made, and perhaps we could have made a thorough revision and how to contribute meaningfully during this time. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay, with that suggestion, do we then raise hands for those who want to be, and then after that we can see whether one group is heavy and we need to move people. Okay, those who want to be in leadership theme 1. That's more or less half the room. Okay, let's try leadership 2. You see the challenge that we have? Leadership 3. From that, you can see that half the room wants to be in leadership one, meaning that we have very few people for the other thematic areas. Given the above, game-changing suggestions before I propose mine. Anyone with a game-changing suggestion? Yes.
I think I'm audible now.
Thank you. I think we could mention the numbers 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When we are all done, those who mentioned the 1 can go to one part, 2, join the other part, 3, join the other part.
That's one. I thought that was the initial suggestion. Okay.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you also for the suggestion. But I believe by the time we came here, we all knew what we wanted, isn't it? So even if you tell someone who's already in group 1 to go in group 3, the contribution will be minimum. So I believe in quality and not numbers. So I believe even if group 3 we have few people, or group 2 is too small, still the contribution will be, the outcome will be the same. So, Doctor, I believe you can trust that whoever is in group 1, they will submit in group. Even if you put them in group 3, still they'll be biased. What they wanted is in group 1. So I suggest you go with the numbers, and indeed it will be visible when we submit.
Okay, let me put another suggestion. Can I request those who put their hands up for group 1 for volunteers to move to group 2? Those who raise their hands for group 1, kindly, if we could get some five or so volunteers to move to group 2, we would be ready to go. I only see, okay, those are 3, 4, 5. Okay, those are for group 2. Okay. May I also get another 5 volunteers for those who first raised for group 1 to move to group 3? Then we shall be ready to go without taking numbers. There is only one person. 2, 3. 2, 3. One more? Okay. I think now we are ready to go. Group 1, we shall see how we arrange ourselves. I think we can comfortably work within here. One corner, group 1, another corner, group 2, and the third corner, group 3. And then we see how we give you the questions for your group work. And as I said, please, when you get into your group, elect a chairperson, elect a rapporteur, because we need the feedback from the group, make the recommendations concrete and as sharp as possible. Thank you very much. I think we've basically agreed that maybe group 1 can sit here, group 2 sits somewhere there, and then at the back we have group 3. Yes, question?
I would love to suggest something small. So how many minutes do we have for each of the groups? If that's answered, I'm thinking for us to have ideas from everybody on all these 3 different areas, we could just do a World Cafe format. So after group 1 discussing, they just go to group 2 table, check what they have written, add on to that, move to group 3, and we just have a World Cafe format. I don't know if that makes sense or it is.
No, that might be a little bit tricky because we have people online as well. So it is straightforward, like the normal working groups. We shall be able to guide you, facilitate you in terms of guidance on what to do. So it shouldn't be a very big, deal. And as I said, the questions are very few. So kindly organize yourselves as we sort out the IT person, as we sort out the people online and how to give them the questions. Thank you very much. Since we already have 3 groups here, they can be and we give them yes, the yeah, please fine. Group 2, group 2, group 2. Group 2, group 2, group 2, group 2. Yeah. All of them are there. 3. So I'll give the question. This is the maybe I give you a question. I give the question. Can I give them to you? Except, as I said, but they are spoken. Yes, it's just a little bit. Yes, better than the same. Yeah, the questions